Good morning and welcome. Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason on this Wednesday. Jason will be with us in just a few moments, but welcome to Hump Day. We've had a crazy, really, when you think about it, melt up, not only in gold and silver. We've had a melt up in Wall Street. We've had a meltdown in the U.S. dollar as everybody's talking about when are rate hikes going to come to an end. Pretty sure that we're going to get another rate hike next Wednesday. So that'll be the next Fed meeting. But more of, I would call these, at least the way the markets want to see it. I don't necessarily see it this way. We'll call it rate hike maintenance that will be going on. I think the big thing has been the shift now in, okay, what is the dollar going to look like after the rate hiking cycle is over? Because, remember how it's supposed to work, right? Hiking rates in the past used to mean, hey, you've got a really strong economy. The economy's overheating, and you're raising rates out of strength, right? Hey, we're strong. It's a strong dollar. And then, of course, obviously, lowering rates. Hey, the economy's underperforming, out of weakness. Well, what we have now is think about it. Rates went from 0 to wherever they finish, somewhere between 5.5% and 6%, right? That's where we're going to be, somewhere between 5.5% and 6% from 0. And when you really think about the rate hiking cycle, look at gold. Gold's actually up since the rate hiking cycle started, which just tells you that it really wasn't, we're operating so much out of strength. I mean, look at GDP. They got excited because GDP was 2%. I mean, that's not great. Historically, that's pretty bad. All of a sudden now, 2%. It's funny this 2% keeps coming. 2% inflation, 2% GDP. This is kind of what we've had, really, for what? The last, 20 years or so, that's about 2%, and maybe a little lower than 2% GDP and lower than 2% inflation. But now we've got the massive debt bubble that is really starting to weigh. How are we going to sell all of the debt? How are we going to sell all of these treasuries? We'll get into that and more today as we got a little bit, not a ton, but we got a little bit of economic data. But we're going to talk about China and the Middle East. A huge increase in the amount of deals being done. And now is the Middle East going to start looking to China for its military type things? We'll talk about that. An update on BRICS. Remember the meeting in August. So I want to say it's August 22nd. We expect them to lay the foundation for a BRICS currency that is going to be in some form of another gold-backed. That is what the markets are expecting. Back to school. Are we going to see a big decrease in back-to-school spending? And then, of course, commercial real estate. We've been waiting. Jason, the commercial real estate write-downs just picked up in the last 48 hours. A couple of more major buildings going up on the auction block. Hundreds of millions of dollars being lost here. So, again, we got all of these things happening, plus student loans, right? They got to start paying on those in another month. So there's a lot of headwinds to go with, hey, the consumer's still hanging in there.
a soft landing is maybe just a slow crash, because that's what this whole thing has been for the last year plus. It just looks like a slow crash. Every time you bring up the news, Joe, or we dig up some more facts about what's going on, it's just more and more information pointing in a direction that things are going to get tougher. Things are going to get harder for the average guy out there. And I think it was Peter Schiff talking about is transitory. You talk about how inflation going away and going down, that's transitory. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, one of the things that we got to be careful here of is dollar weakness. Now, the dollar at the lows of the year yesterday, that will actually add to inflation as the dollar weakens. So, one of the things, believe it or not, I know it's kind of hard to imagine, but was helping inflation not go as, think about how high it's been, was how strong the dollar was. Now all of a sudden that trade is unraveling, and where is the demand going to come from? China and Japan are now net sellers. We've gotten, the European nations have been picking up the slack on buying a lot of this debt, but as we know, in a few weeks, this debt is now going to transition to much longer term. It's one thing to lend money for 6 months and get 5+%. It's another thing to say, hey, I'm going to lend you money for 10 years and only get 3.7 or 3.8%. That's going to be a much harder sell. So a lot of people, including me, expect rates to go higher even without the Fed. We'll be back after the break. (800-951-0592). Joe and Jason on this hump day. A quick look in at the markets. The Dow's up 140. The S&P's up 16. The Nasdaq's up 62. Right, we've had this melt up in the markets, and we'll see how this plays out. Microsoft, the big play here, as they are now going to start charging $30 a month for its AI instrument. Yeah, so the big get bigger, as we told you. There's 7 stocks really driving this rally. But remember Bubba Horwitz? Now I don't know if he's going to be right. Pretty smart guy, saying this is one of these classic traps. Very light, obviously summertime, super light volumes, and they're just waiting for the big boys to get back to the office, and then they're just going to crush the retail guy. A way to avoid that, check out our friends at YRefi, right? Up to 10.25% returns. You heard me right. You know what their worst return is? If you go 1 year, it's 6.25 for 1 year. If you go 5 years, 10.25. Fixed. It doesn't change. It's not correlated to Wall Street. This is such a great place to park money, especially if you're getting closer to retirement, right? You don't want to, hey, I don't want to play that. You know what? Horowitz may be right. He may be wrong. Right? Remember what he said. He goes, I'm still sticking to my guns that by the time this is over, Wall Street's going to be down 50 to 70%. I hope he's not right. I pray he's not right. But this is why you have money in different places, and one of those places, it's got to be YRefi. Check them out. InvestYRefi.com. That's the word invest, the letter Y, REFY.com. Or just call them 888-YRefi24. And like I said, it's not correlated to the Fed. It's not correlated to Wall Street. We got an election season coming up. What a disaster that's looking like. Tons of things that, hey, you know what? Just not worth playing the game. So check them out, InvestYRefi.com. Jason, yesterday we talked about it, and I didn't really get a chance to get into it. But China is moving to replace the U.S. inside all the Gulf monarchies. We know that they've started buying natural gas and crude oil in renminbi. Saudi Arabia had said, you know what, we're getting ready. They're making plans, right? We're going to start taking something other than dollars. The UAE already taking renminbi. Well, and again, we know, right, the Biden administration, we've said this over and over. You got a weak president, you're going to have problems. And right now, the problem really is, right, the Middle Eastern, especially the monarchs in the Middle East. Jason, they got no respect for the guy, and of course, China's more than happy to fill that void.
Yeah, it's the world is changing economically. It's very apparent, and China's wanting to flex its muscles. It wants to become more important on the world stage, and it's going to share its advantages above the U.S. and muscle into those markets. And really, it's all about the Middle East. What do they want, right? That's all it really comes down to. What do they want? And sure seems like this so-called strong ally of ours, Saudi Arabia, doesn't seem to be in our corner anymore. So that's what happens when you deal with Middle Eastern countries, right, Joe? Eventually, they're just going to make common sense decisions.
Right.
Now, it looks like China's better for them.
The new Saudi leader doesn't even take Biden's phone calls. He takes Xi Jinping's phone calls. So they met. Think about this. It was 7 months ago that they met, right, when they started talking about BRICS membership. Saudi Arabia, UAE, most of the Middle Eastern countries now have filed the paperwork to become part of BRICS. One of the deals that has just been made is the Chinese seed giant, Syngenta. Saudi Arabia and the UAE and their sovereign wealth funds are going to be major players in a $9 billion Shanghai IPO. These were IPOs that used to happen in America, right? These are big, $9 billion IPO. That's a huge, huge deal. And the Middle East is heavily involved in all of this. And they're saying that, listen to this, investments by Gulf companies in Gulf countries in China have increased by more than 1,000%. Now, I know what you're thinking. What, over 10 years? 1,000% over 20 years? But maybe 5 years? No. Over 1,000%, Jason, in just the last year alone. This thing is a rocket ship right now.
That's a lot. 1,000% is a lot, Joe. 100% is a lot, right? That's doubling. So 1,000. Anytime someone says 1,000%, that's a huge difference. That's a huge number, Joe. Holy cow, right? That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things people don't see. This isn't on the mainstream news. This is just another sign. Listen, and Jason, I think, said it best. We're not talking about the dollar turning into the pound sterling. It's not what we're saying. But the realities are very simple. The dollar's domination is falling. Right? It's falling right now about 59%. I mean, think about it. This number used to be about 80%. 59% now globally of all these transactions are done in dollars. And my guess is we're talking, hey, this number's going to probably drop below 50. Still probably be in the 40s, but drop below 50. That's very significant. It wouldn't have been that big of a deal if our debt was $5 trillion. Okay, still doable. But now when you've got $40+ trillion of debt, and of course adding to it $2, $3, $4 trillion a year, Jason, this is another thing that when we talk about, remember we started the show, dollar weakness. When the Fed stops raising rates, all of the dollar weakness things come home to roost. And Jason, this is one of them. China's been dumping treasuries for the last several years. Japan has now been dumping, and now it looks like the Middle East is not going to be a place where they're going to be adding either.
Yeah, if you go from my perspective, people come in and talk to me about my perspective on things and what a discussion is had. I don't see a difference between the Fed and the Bank of China. I don't really think there's a real war between Russia and America or China. I don't see that. I think it's false. I think it's fake. And this is so what is happening? What Joe's talking about is actually happening. The dollar is becoming less important. Well, why? I don't think it's because China and Russia and the BRICS are just so much more appealing. I think, every central bank is privately owned. When the Bank of China has a meeting, and I don't know what their meetings are, I don't pay attention, but it's going to be if there's a picture of it, it'll be a bunch of Chinese guys sitting around a table doing business. But that's not who owns the Bank of China. These are centralized private institutions, and they all work together. So the dollar losing relevance, we're getting ready for a whole new economic system worldwide, and all these central banks are going to be right in line with each other for when this thing changes. And I think what it is that it's just not necessary for the dollar to be the world reserve currency. That's what it is now. With all these central banks in almost every single country in the world, there's just no relevance to the dollar being the world reserve currency. It's not necessary anymore. So I think what they're going to do is they're going to divide the world reserve currencies into whatever percentage of the market you own. If America is 40% of all the world's markets, then they'll get 40% in that world reserve currency. If China is 35%, that's how I think it's going to go, Joe. It's just not necessary for the dollar to be the world reserve currency. There is nothing really competing. I know we talk about the BRICS, Joe, and how this is a competing. Of course, there's always in the news, there's got to be some competition. There's got to be some threat, right? There's got to be some enemy element. So that's going to be there so that everybody signs on to whatever side they're on, right? But to me, it's just one side. It's central banks across the world working together to have an economic system that benefits them. So the dollar going down, absolutely, Joe. I think they figured out a recipe. That's why all the central banks are buying equal amounts of gold and percentage-wise, as I believe it. And the dollar is just way too big and bloated for this new world system, as far as I can tell.
Well, the haircut has to come, right? The haircut's going to come.
It's coming.
And listen, it's coming for everybody. It's coming for China. It's coming for America, right? It's coming for Europe, right? It's a fiat debt bubble. This is why you see the flight to gold. This isn't an accident, right? These central bankers, they're in the meetings. They're not doing this because, I think gold's going to go from 2,000 to 20,000. That's not why they're buying it. Right? They're buying it because they already know, we're going to reset here. We've got a debt reset coming. And gold is going to be the asset we're going to need to have in order to gain confidence in whatever the new thing is. And I think this is why we're going to hear, allegedly on the 22nd of August, these BRIC countries laying the foundation for, hey, this is what's going to come next. And when you deal with us and when you deal in the BRICS currency, there's going to be some kind of gold backing. So, Jason, they're sending the message that this is coming. And I don't care. You don't want to believe it? Don't believe it. It's fine. I don't care. You want to pay the price for being ignorant? That's up to you. Right? I mean, $40 trillion doesn't lie. Japan, year over year, has cut their holdings of U.S. Treasuries by 10%. China has cut it by almost 7%. There's a huge shift going globally, Jason, and because they're preparing. What we don't know, the only thing we don't know is the time. Right? That's the thing we don't know. Right? We don't know, is it this year, next year? Here's what here's what we do know. Whatever that time is, it got a lot closer in the last 5 years, a lot closer And I think this is something where most people out there before 2030 gets here, we're going to be looking at a much different monetary system.
Gold could go off next month. So how do you get a Wall Street guy who has no interest in gold at all because you can't enrich yourself on physical gold? How do you get someone like that interested? You have an announcement from the BRICS in August that they're going to back their new currency with just 10% gold, that's a very conservative number. All these guys, all these investors across the world will be like, oh, we better buy gold then. If everyone has to have 10% to back this currency that they're going to do, everyone's going to want gold. Here's the thing, the Wall Street guys probably aren't paying attention that they've been buying the gold for a long time to record amounts, right? But that's when that big money might just start pouring in next month. So, but Joe, I say you better buy it because this is the last stage of this good old days where gold is in this 1,800, 1,900, 2,000 range. You know, it could start in August, Joe, and suddenly we're looking at 3,000 gold by the end of the year and maybe $5,000 by the end of next year. So we
talked about, right, gold 2,500, silver at 30. You know, silver right now up again today. You know, gold's flat at 1980. But Jason's right. Listen, we're getting ready, at least in a shorter cycle. We're getting ready for the next dollar weakness cycle. Does that cycle lead into the next monetary phase? We'll see. $800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour, Joe and Jason on this Wednesday. I've got two different special items today. The main, I guess, the run-of-the-mill, if you will, item, the 1/10 ounce American Gold Eagle, which has always been a pretty popular coin, but with the digital currency coming has become more popular than ever. I mean, going back to like Y2K, it was a wildly popular coin during Y2K. Of course, during Y2K, you could buy this coin. It was 30, 32, then it was 38. I think as high as $42 during Y2K. Right now, we have 1/10 ounce American Gold Eagles on sale at $255. I don't need to tell you how far below we are than everybody else. Think about it. Gold's up like $80 in the last week and a half. And we're sitting here at $255. That's just great barterable material. The tank of gas type of a thing, if you needed to trade, for something like that or a generator, these are the things for those people that fit that need. And it sucks because you got to think about that. I mean, you don't want to think that, God, am I really going to need to barter? And chances are there's probably going to come a time where that absolutely is going to be the case. So buy them when they're on sale. 10th ounce American Gold Eagles at $255. And then I have an item. This is unique, extremely limited, and there's some restrictions on this. I am going to get in my possession 33 rolls of 1995 Silver Eagles. Now, all of you out there listening, Silver Eagles we started minting Silver Eagles in 1986. That was the first year of issuance. In the 90s, especially the mid-90s years, 94, 95, 96, 97, silver and gold, they were out of fashion. Right? Remember the Clinton years, those couple of years with Bill Clinton where we were running the alleged budget surpluses? Of course, we really weren't, but that's okay. Alan Greenspan, we're going to have the entire national debt paid off by 2010. Right, don't worry, Social Security will be fine. Medicare, Medicaid will be fine. Because look at all the money we're going to save on the interest on the debt. Look at it. What was it? A couple weeks ago, hey, we're now spending $1 trillion a year on interest on the debt. Get ready for it to be $2 trillion. But I digress. They just didn't mint that many. 1995, less than 5 million ounces. Think about today. A low mintage year today would be like 30 million, right? But so when people put date sets together, right, the coins that are the hardest to get, right, 94, 95, 96, 97, those 4 years, they're just super hard to get. So I've got 33 rolls. This is coming out of an IRA. It's been in there since 1995. So they've been sitting in this vault for a very, very long time. Matter of fact, got moved from HSBC Bank to the Delaware Depository after 9/11. But here's how this is going to work. You got to pay for it ahead of time. And again, we don't have to pay for it today, but you got to pay for it, this week or early next week. And then we'll call you when we have them. It's going to be 3 or 4 weeks, but you're going to get them. There's only 33 rolls. I went out to the big 3 online guys. You know who they are. We all know who they are. The cheapest was $1,060 a roll. The most expensive, $1,480 a roll. So that tells you how valuable. That's $53 to $74 per coin. That's what they want for 1995 Silver Eagle. I've got these 33 rolls at $75 or $75, $750, $750 a roll. That puts your cost at $37.50. I couldn't even find on eBay. They had like these ugly toned ones in the 40s. A lot of these coins on eBay, $50, $60, $70 for these 1995s. You can buy them from us when you get them, put them on eBay, and make a ton of money. We're not going to go through all of that, but 19 rolls of 1995 Silver Eagles. You just don't see. 1996. By the way, I did look. Some places want $100 now for a 1996. Just crazy. But these are just a great value. Think about a regular roll of Silver Eagles today, 2023, 2022, $710. Jason, you're only paying $40 more to get a really rare date in Silver Eagles now.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's considered a rare date, but it's, like Joe said, when it comes to putting, sets of coins together, and coin collectors are, it's still a very popular hobby. There's less of these than the other years, except for 1996. So this is a cool thing to get, because you're essentially just buying it for about the same price as just silver only. There's a little bit of a markup, but that's because there's only a little bit of a markup for us, so we pass it on, and you guys can absolutely do what Joe says. You can take these coins, you can part out the rolls if you want, do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want with them, but the worst thing that happens, Joe, is you get a roll of silver. Best thing is as time goes on, I was talking to Joe about these coins this morning. I think it's very possible when they changed the reverse design in 2021, this may have become a more collectible item to get, because now with new coins, and this is a newer coin, 1986, that's the first year. Well, now it's got enough years behind it that there's quite a, what was that, coming up on 40 years of coins, right, Joe? So and plus, collectible coins has ups and downs, and when times get tough economically, collectibles become a little less attractive. But this one has something better to it. Silver and gold doesn't have the downfalls of collectibles. So this has the intrinsic value and the numismatic value both in one. So you win on both sides, Joe. If the collectible value isn't there, the silver's there, right? If the silver's there, so it's it's a good way to go. It's always good to get a collectible coin in silver, Joe, right?
Right, and not pay a collectible price, not even close. 800-951-0592. This is a one-shot deal. We'll be back after the break. Joe and Jason, Patriot Radio News Hour on this Wednesday. 25 rolls of 1995 Silver Eagles are left. I won't be able to get them again. I won't even be able to touch this price point. There's a reason why everybody else is at least $1,000+ for a roll, and we're only at 750. Ad here. This is a great ad, without a doubt. Like Jason said, this is a much lower mintage year in silver. I don't know if I'll call it a rare coin. It's a rare silver eagle, without a doubt.
Yes.
94,
yes.
95, 96, 97. Those are the big four. Throw 86 in there, that first year of issuance. In 86, there's plenty, but there's not that many. A lot of them got all touched up, right? So these are, like I said, these have been sitting in a vault for the better part now of, 26, 27 years at $750, 800-951-0592. Silver's up another 15 cents here, 25.25. Gold's down 2 right now at 1,978. We've got the 10th ounce American Gold Eagles also on sale right now at $255. And Jason, 2 things I want to touch on. Back to school. So that's kind of the next, I guess, retail season. And the retailers are already saying that, according to the latest survey done by Deloitte, back to school spending, I did not know this, the second largest spending event for families after the holiday season. So, take out, I guess, Thanksgiving, Christmas. This is kind of the big family spending event. It's anticipated to decline for the first time in 9 years. So we'll keep our eye on that. And again, retail sales, they weren't great, but they weren't horrible, right, Jason? We can say that about a lot of things, right? The horrible stuff hasn't happened. Everyone seems to be hanging in there, but every month it seems like they're hanging in there a little less and a little less. And now they're saying, hey, back to school, they're anticipating the first decline in 9 years.
It definitely has the feel for the consumer that you're just barely holding on, right? If you're hanging on to the edge of the cliff, you can hang there for quite a while. You don't want to fall, right? That's kind of what it feels like we're at, Joe. It seems like everybody's just hanging on. Everyone's just making it, right, for the most part, because obviously the devastating recessionary type numbers, that's not what's really happening. It just seems like we have a very slight recession that's been going on since the beginning of last year. I remember Bubba Horowitz yesterday, the clip we played. He said that we're in a recession. We've been in a recession for 8 quarters, right? That's what he was saying.
That's what he said.
That's what he said. So I mean, it all depends on how you calculate the numbers. Do you believe the numbers they're giving us? First of all, So I think if the economy hasn't been good, I think it's going to get worse. I think that's the whole point of everything. It's going to get worse. And when it comes to back to school shopping, that's a good indicator, Joe, for sure, as to how healthy the average American family is doing. And unfortunately, school used to not be a big expenditure, right? It was all, it was all a part of your local taxed region, and they took care of all the expenses.
Right, you showed up with your lunch. And a number 2 pencil with the eraser on it, right, and maybe some magic markers in a little box, a pencil holder. Now you got to bring the toilet paper, the baby wipes, right, the paper towels. I mean, it's a huge deal. You
got to rent the hardware because it's all computers now. You got to rent that thing, right? There's all kinds.
Your ebook. Right, your Apple product, right? Yeah, all that stuff. So,
and I haven't heard. I mean, my guess is they're probably paying for the busing. I haven't heard. I don't know how it works with schools, and you have to pay for all kinds of stuff. The lunch programs, you have to pay for sports, right? All of that. So yeah, I wonder if paying for sports is part of that number, Joe. I don't know. There's probably a lot that goes into those numbers.
I think they're just talking about you're going to the store and buying pencils and pens and paper and binders and folders. But I don't know. You're right. There's a lot to it. Speaking of a lot to it, we've had the commercial real estate pause. That pause is over. Baltimore. 1 South Street in Baltimore. Now, I don't know where 1 South Street is. But they had a 30-story office building. It just sold for $24 million. They couldn't refinance it. They had to sell it. Well, here's the problem. That is a 64% discount because the last time the tower sold, 2015, right? So they did probably a 7-year, no interest ARM, whatever they did, right? With a grace period and this and that involved. It sold for $66 million. So what was worth $66 million is now worth $24 million. Just a 60-some% loss. And they had a picture of the building. It's actually a nicer looking building. The building opened in 1992, so it's not like it's a super old building, right? This isn't a building from the 70s or the 60s. And then, not to be outdone, Starwood Capital Group has defaulted on a $212 million mortgage backed by office buildings in Sandy Springs in northern Fulton County, Georgia, basically an Atlanta suburb. Starwood defaulting, again, $212 million default. Just the tip of the iceberg. We'll be back right after the break. (800-951-0592) Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason. This limited edition 1995 Silver Eagle rolls. Remember, you got to pay for it ahead of time. I know that's a pain in the butt, but we'll have them in about a month. It's all about the same. This is huge, 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 huge discounts. I mean, guys, borderline half off. $750 a roll. We've got less than 20 rolls now, so they're going to be sold out. And then, of course, the 10th ounce American Gold Eagle. Another great price there on that as well. $255 at 800-951-0592. So we had 2 different defaults. One in Baltimore. They just sold the tower at a 64% loss, and it was a 1990. It was built in the 90s. This one here in Atlanta, Starwood, a little different story, much bigger default too, $212 million. It was 790,000 square feet. Now the property was built in 74. By the way, we'll get to you in the order that you called. So if you're on hold, please be patient. Because we don't want these to sell out. There's only one line open right now. This was built in 1974. We know these old buildings, you might as well just hand them back. But here was something interesting. This property got what they call renovated in 2017. The property was 87% full in 2018. By the end of last year, that had dipped to 60% full. My guess is it's less full now. On July the 9th, Starwood failed to refinance or pay off the debt and the borrower has confirmed they were unable to pay off the loan. Remember, these are all interest-only loans, so they would have to come up with $212 million. Well, they know the building's not worth $212 million. My guess is it's worth 60% less than $1,200 million. So they go, all right, just take the keys back. So they were unable to pay off the loan at maturity. They said that lending standards have tightened considerably. Jason, this is just math, right? For these companies like Starwood, this was just math. Hey, the building, we owe $212. It's worth, whatever, $100. It's worth $75. Yeah, we're just giving the keys back. We're going to see a lot of this in this commercial space.
You said this is in Baltimore, right?
Well, no, this one was in Atlanta. So the Baltimore one, so there's two different properties. One in Baltimore, they just defaulted. Hey, we can't they sold it for a loss. They got $24 million. They owed $66 million. That's one thing, taking a $40 million loss kind of stinks. But this Starwood property in Atlanta, that loss is going to be much, much bigger.
I just remember 2019 we were talking about Baltimore, and they were just bowling over houses and apartment buildings that were just completely empty. So this just seems like once again another situation that's continually getting worse. Do you remember that? Remember that we talk about Baltimore's taking out empty buildings and properties because it just was so economically depressed there.
I'm getting a hand signal there. We've got a couple of lines opening, and there's still a few rolls of those 1995s. If you want to jump on them, 800-951-0592. Jason and I are coming right back with the Half Empty Cup.